like to ask Mark Corwin to come and speak about recording arts and electroacoustic studies, please.
Thank you. So that I can do this quickly and get right back to the guys who were doing their thing, I've written this all up. But it looks like I may, in fact, be preaching pretty much to the converted for this, except for the TV camera, possibly. So I'd like to really talk about the pedagogical approach as adopted here at Concordia, whereby the training of the art of recording music as a profession is in fact an art form in its own right. One that requires the same rigor of skill development, historical awareness, and robust perceptive skills as other creative art forms. It's not an engineering trade, as many know it. While this may seem self-evident, it's not understood by the majority of training traditional recording schools around the world. The commercial recording of sound, as we know, it's an industry that's about 130 years old and has had quite a varied history with respect to the evolution of the technologies it employs us, and also more specifically to the training of its engineers. And you notice I'm using the word engineers again. Changes in this technology have taken us from the Edison phonograph with its monophonic cylindrical track, recorded and listened to through an acoustic amplification horn with incredible fidelity, to the modern professional digital recording studio with its pristine recording and playback systems, and to today's laptop computer recording studios that can rival any project studio of only a decade ago for even a fraction of the cost. It's reasonable to refer to the recording industry as a disruptive technology. In a way, it has changed the way we receive and perceive our musical experience, and thus has also changed the way performed and recorded music is created and produced. Most significantly, we no longer listen to the majority of our music in a live setting, as in previous centuries, preferring to listen to our own personalized playlists of music when and where we wish, potentially at any waking hour. Actually could be asleep in the stores. It's there inevitable that the sheer variety of music that is readily available to the average listener has had the effect of broadening the palette of that listener. In response, the recording engineer-producer has had to develop a wider palette of artistic skills, reinforced by heightened perceptive abilities and matched by a highly developed technical proficiency. The recording profession has evolved to the extent that seasoned recording producers are in effect artists in sound design. Modern recordings require not only artistically informed sonic designers in the spatial arrangement of the final mix, but they require an artistically informed recording environment and a creative approach to the acoustic pickup itself. The precision and quality of the modern recording and mixing environment has allowed the engineer or producer the ability to conceive of fantastical environments, requiring the development of multiple speaker systems capable of reproducing these audio creations. The seemingly simple concept of stereophony was one attempt at creating the illusion of a soundstage in front of the listener, mimicking the front-centric perceived music concert. The obvious perceptive drawback being the lack of realism of the acoustic space from the sides and the rear of the listener, acoustic quadrants that are often taken for granted in the listening environment. Just staring at me. Subsequently, and although doomed to fail due to technical difficulties at the time, the music industry's dabbling with quadraphonic sound in the 70s hearkened the development of a more realistic, aka surround, playback system. Jumped to the current plethora of surround systems from the modest 5.1 home array, 8-channel studio systems, to ambisonics, various theater surround systems, even the experimental wave field synthesis research. Of course, one shouldn't forget other artistic applications, such as installations in spaces like ZKM, the Beast, and other configurations. It's clear that the recording artist and producer and or composer with sound requires an advanced understanding of the nature of sound propagation in all areas of the recording and listening environment. Well-designed and installed audio playback systems, whether stereo or multi-speakered, are for the most part really only found in commercial or educational settings. These are the well-designed and well-installed. The cost of professional acoustic treatment alone of the listening environment is nearly prohibitive in a residential setting. Having said that, it's interesting to note that there are likely to be more adequately installed surround listening systems in homes than there are well-placed stereo systems in those same homes. Users who decide to install surround systems are more likely to understand the need for a basic symmetrical speaker array than they are for the placement of their stereo system, where one speaker happens to be in the living room and the other one in the kitchen. On the other hand, and despite the advancements in technology, the industry of surround sound productions are rife with examples of poor surround recordings, where an awareness of the potential of surround environment is misunderstood or simply not considered. The capturing, recreation, or creation of a surround recording is much more involved than simply placing a reverberant signal in the surround speakers, or placing a destination of a sound object to mimic the moving of sound, of an object on a film screen. Surround recordings are still in many ways a boundary or fringe area of artistic production, and while most commercial, popular, and classical recordings continue to be predominantly stereocentric creations, sound from movies, theater, and video games are pushing the limits of the near realistic surround sound. Certainly the surround industry, in its broadest application, is informed by the developments and the use of multi-speaker arrays, as found in facilities such as universities, where the development of its students' artistic practice and research often pushes the boundary of that tradition. Electroacoustic programs and their facilities, like Concordia's, have therefore provided students with surround environments, both in their studios and the classrooms, so that the learning experience entices heightened perceptive and creative capabilities in those students. It could be said that we aim to train our graduates to be the most perceptive and creatively enabled of the entry-level sound producer artists in the profession because of these environments. Now, one of the distinct advantages of the North American educational system, where universities, particularly where universities include practical music study, as opposed to the European tradition where the study is housed only in a conservatory, is the increasing level of artistic training and in the practice of sound arts, including recording arts, in universities. Recording as an art form isn't truly adopted as such by much of the traditional training community in this field. Trade schools that focus on the technology and theory of the process have been the traditional location of training in recording arts, and they abound all across the world. The term engineer is evidence in this technical trade tradition. Typically, a 20 to 40 week training period is found in many of these schools, and they provide little to no consideration of the development of an artistic practice for their clientele. The trade school approach has historically propagated an interesting hierarchy in many commercial recording studios, most typically in Europe, where the engineer, while being technically proficient with the equipment in the studio, are therefore, for the most part, allowed little artistic input into the recording production, that occupation being reserved for the producer of the recording, who have traditionally had robust musical backgrounds, which may include university-level musical training, covering traditional music theory, ear training, instrumental performance, both solo and ensemble. They also have traditionally not been technically inclined in the studio tradition. Now, of course, the exception to this would be the Tonmeister program, of which McGill is a member. Having said this, the hierarchical structure in this studio situation is being eaten away by the large number of multi-talented musician artists operating small to medium-sized sound studios at a fraction of the cost, as I may say. I would argue that the large number of the most successful music recording producers, engineers, were from this artistic clan, if you wish, of musicians, composers, and arrangers who gravitated toward the art form of recording production, either out of necessity or out of sheer affinity to the opportunities of creating a musically and artistically rich listening experience of their own for their own musical creations or for those of the musicians they support. One of the ways Concordia is assisting students in their future careers, therefore, in sound, is in the development of their critical and analytical approach to their artistic practice. The art of recording is especially advantaged when informed by a thoughtful, robust, and creative ear. Thank you.